photon shot noise. Basically, what the photon shot noise is, so the light arrives at the pixels at different at a random intervals, and it's best described by the Poisson distribution. I'm not going to get into the statistics or math. I'm not a math nerd, but I'll show you guys what I mean by this later on. But you can, for now, you can think about it like how if you look at it when it rains, if it drizzles, and how the pattern that the rain leaves on the pavement, drop here and drop there, randomness, the light reaches the sensor the same way. So that's one type of noise. The other type of noise is read noise. This is probably the most important type of noise for astrophotographers to know about, because it's got the biggest impact on the faint signals. So read noise is just the noise that happens when your signal is being converted. So the analog photon signal comes in, the camera reads it, and it reads the voltage, however many. When the photon hits the pixel, it goes to the substrate, and if the camera was 100% efficient, each photon would generate an electron. They're not quite at 100% efficient, but some of them are pretty damn close. But at any rate, so the idea is to measure the change of voltage that each photon makes as it hits the sensor for a given time. So that's done by the analog to digital converter, or otherwise known as the ADC. The other source of noise, and you guys I'm sure you've heard of all this as well, the fixed noise, or dark current noise is one type of noise. It's like when you turn on the electronics, and the longer you leave them on, you get heat, that thermal noise that converts electrons to be free into the substrate. And those freed electrons, part of the signal now, despite the fact that they weren't generated by the photons that were arriving at the sensor, nonetheless, they still contribute an unwanted value to the overall signal, which will mitigate later in post-processing. All right, so to go into more detail about the read noise, the best way to fix or deal with read noise is by increasing gain, or ISO. And the reason this is a good idea is because the ISO will increase the signal that's being converted, but the read noise will stay the same. So when you increase the ISO or the gain, it does nothing to the read noise. The read noise stays there, and it records it at a level that's higher if you increase the ISO. And if you don't increase it enough, the data is going to get lost in the noise, and you're not going to see that much.
Lou, can I ask a question?
Sure, Harry.
What's the difference between gain and ISO?
It's the same. Gain is what we use for the astrophotography cameras. It measures 80. It's measured in ADU, so that's the analog to digital unit. It serves the same principle. I'll go into more detail in a little bit, but it's not that much difference. The ISO and gain, you can think of them interchangeably. What happens when you increase the gain or the ISO, you lose dynamic range, because it takes fewer pixels, fewer electrons per pixel to reach the saturation point. So when you increase the ISO, rather than having 10 you need 10 electrons to move it to the next ADU to increase the signal at a certain point. Then the camera notices the difference. Well, if you decrease the if you increase the ISO, that gets decreased, and there's a point where every time one electron hits the sensor, it increases at 1 ADU, and that is called unity gain. And we'll look at a couple of graphs and that describe the different cameras, where that point is and how that changes. The other thing that we want to figure out is exposure time. So we don't want to expose our images for such a short period of time that we have to deal with the photon shot noise. But also, if we're in a light polluted sky, we're kind of forced to limit our time, because the light pollution will cause shot noise, or you'll have noise from the light pollution. So the rule of thumb is the darker the sky is, the longer you can expose for. Of course, you want to expose for the longest time possible, but there's a limit to that. And if you're going to make long exposure, you're going to make sure you have an accurate tracking mount. You want to auto guide and most likely dither as well. So when we're talking about DSLR cameras, there's two types of DSLR cameras. There's ISO invariant cameras or ISO variant cameras. And that just means the level of read noise, where the sweet spot is on the camera, how far you can push the ISO without affecting the noise profile. And Harry, I think this might answer your question here. If you look at the gain here, the more electrons you need to go from one ADU to the next, the lower the gain, the greater the dynamic range, like we talked about. So unity gain would be increasing the ADU by 1 electron. So basically, that's how it's measured in the astrophotography dedicated cameras. Okay, so here's going to be an example of shot noise. You can think of shot noise, like I said, like the raindrops, or if you take a shotgun, think of a shotgun as your telescope, and the bird shot or BBs inside the bird shot as this light signal, and this is what happens. So you can. So we'll go back to that. You see that pattern? I just like doing that. I like the effect. But anyway, but the pattern pretty much demonstrates what happens with the photon shot noise. Now, I didn't go and make all these little holes a zillion times. I only made 3 different. But basically, the whole thing would be obliterated when the picture's full. And here at the end of this is another example of that. So here we go. Here's another example of shot noise. Now, if I'm going to get in here and show you, guys can also see some of the fixed pattern noise. I don't know if you can notice up here. Is it coming through? If you can see, maybe not there. You can see how there's like a checkerboard here. There's the fixed pattern noise there. By the time you get to the center square, the fixed pattern noise disappears. But as the signal gets increased, as you can see, the difference between having long enough exposure so that the photon shot, there's enough photons hitting the sensor that they're all filled up enough so that there's no empty spaces. Here's an example from my camera about fixed pattern noise. This is a bias frame. This is just the inherent noise that gets in the camera when you turn it on. And you can see the lines here. That's from the electronics, the rows of wires, I guess, or circuitry in the transistor or in the sensor that moves the signal around. And then there's this little glow on the bottom. It's also a function of the camera electronics. And I made a histogram of this here. You can see I stretched it a bit so that you can see where most of this noise lives on the left side here. And here it is again, but this is for the dark signal. Now you can see the noise is a little bit different here. There's a checker pattern as opposed to this one where the pattern was just, you see these are just almost vertical lines. I mean, you might see some horizontal banding here, but mostly it's vertical banding. But here you can see horizontal and vertical banding. But what's even more predominant here is there are hot pixels involved. And when you look at the histogram in the dark noise, you can see there's a few more pixels that are a little brighter present compared to the one from the bias. Because the camera's just on longer and it gets hotter. All right, so here's an example of what happens if we're looking at a side profile of the pixel. As the photons come in and hit the substrate, they release the electrons, and they get counted. So they're saved in the pixel here, and then each pixel has what's called the full well depth. So when you don't when you have the gain all the way down to the minimum number, you can hold the most amount of greatest charge, and that will give you the most dynamic range in your sensor.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
The full well depth, how do you know when you've filled that? Is
Okay.
there any indication that?
Well, yeah, you can the full. You'll be clipping your signal, the signal in your picture on your when you're looking at your image, it'll be pure white.
So during processing, you'll see this, or not before processing?
Oh, there's actually a number. You can actually figure out what that number is. Your camera has specific value. All that's recorded in the camera. I think the ZWO full well depth is like 19,000 electrons with no gain, with a lowest gain. But there's a formula we're going to use to figure this out.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so again, we'll talk about noise here. If you look at the schematic I have on the bottom here, the little drawing, we're going from left to right here. From the electrons hit the sensor, then they go to the amplifier, and then they go to the converter, and that's the different types of noise happens in these different areas. So when you increase the ISO, you get some noise from the voltage boost, but it doesn't affect the noise that happens when the data gets converted to from analog to digital. So we'll see here. Basically, this just says what we just talked about. Now, if you want to find the sweet spot of your camera, now I think I'll make the slide deck available, I guess, on the website, but so you guys can click on those links. But we can also go on these links, and you can figure out where the sweet spot is for your camera. A couple of good websites there that shows you the ideal ISO values. Again, here's another example of the read noise in a signal versus a signal. You see the difference if you have your camera gain, and the gain would be the number, or the ISO would be the gain, or ISO would be the number on the left. So it goes from 0 in this scale, 0 to 16 or 1800 there. And you can see how close this is oversimplified and over exaggerated, but if you see that how the read noise, I colored in as orange because that happens when it gets to this orange little ADC that I made in the graph. So you can see if you separate it, if you increase the voltage here on this side, it'll separate the signal from the read noise so that you're not stacking the noise with the signal. Again, here's another example of what happens. So yeah, the read noise here on the bottom, but the camera, the full well depth, let's say in this particular example, is up to this green, empty green box here. So it could still accept more electrons. And so that's we talked about, that's where the dynamic range is. It's hasn't reached the dynamic range yet. But if you continue to go and fill it up, no more photons can be collected. So this is what we don't want to do, is we will lose this data. We won't use it. All right, so let's go and look at the these websites here. So let me see here. Where do I have this? All right, so you can look at this. You can go to Photons to Photos. This is a great website. There's all kinds of graphs you can look through in here. But here it tells you what the Unity ISO is for each individual camera, what the read noise is, full well capacity, and right here it says at ISO 822 for this particular camera, which is the one that I use, and it is ISO invariant. So you don't want to put it higher than that value. Now, you got to take with a grain of salt these numbers. They're just either they're looking at one camera. So we're talking about, thousands of cameras, millions in a lot, and it's going to vary a little bit. So, whoever did this graph, I'm sure did not get this value from multiple cameras. But anyway, if you're curious to know what your camera is, you can go to this website and just scroll down and look at your camera or find your chip or whatever here. This other website here that we have also shows you the quantum efficiency of the camera, the same thing, saturation capacity. Let's see if we can type this in. We're going to look at the input referred noise here. So if you can compare this camera, let's say, to this Canon camera to see the new Nikon mirrorless camera. You can see the profile on this camera. So they figured out, you can use this chart to figure out where the ideal ISO is on your camera by finding the lowest point of the curve. Now, it's really difficult for this top one, where it doesn't change anymore, with the slope, where you see if you make a line to the slope here, it doesn't change. It changes dramatically much past this point right here. So, some say it's around 800. Other people argue 200, but the graph we just showed us was closer to 800. With this camera, the Nikon camera, you can see that it changes a lot. And right here, there's an enormous drop. It's just because the way, the method that the camera uses to read the noise changes, the algorithm they use. So, you want to check carefully on your camera and find out where that spot is. And you can look at the ZWO cameras, right? All right, let's see here. Oh, excuse me. Oops. Let's look at some of the planetary cameras. So the one that a lot of us have here, or the one that Agapios had when we had his lecture, was the 224 MC, this one. And if you look at the data on this, you can see the full well capacity. You can see how the read noise, how the full well capacity decreases as you increase the gain, and also where the drop is from when just like the Nikon camera, it uses a different algorithm to measure gain. So when you are choosing which gain to use, you want to go at least, you don't want to, you want to go at least this far, at least I think it's around 60. Oh, there it is, 60, yeah. like I said before, I don't like these exact numbers. So rather than going exactly 60, I don't want to get stuck on this side of the curve. I might go 65. Some people go 61, some people go 70, you know, but I just want to go a little bit further to make sure that you get the biggest benefit.
So Lou,
Yes.
just a point, because I use ZWO almost exclusively. This range for gain, even within ZWO equipment like the ASI Air Pro, will have a different range.
Yeah.
So it becomes confusing.
Well, you have to look at each individual camera has its own profile.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to look. I'm giving you the example of one camera. Not all of them.
If I take this camera, and I'm using it on the ASI Pro, ASI Air Pro,
Oh, okay.
that max gain may be different on the Pro than it is in their specs. It's confusing.
I see. You know, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. I'm not familiar with the ASI Pro.
Yeah, it's just a comment. I wonder for sure when I set it what I'm really setting it at. But
does anybody else use that system?
Yeah, this is Mike. I think I know what you're talking about. On the Pro, because you put in your camera, so the Pro knows what camera that you're actually using, and so it resets the allowable gains as far as I understand it. And you can still set like gain to 200 if the sweet spot seems to be like 200 or 150. So I think if you compare the ASR Plus against the previous unit, the older unit, you might see different gain numbers actually shown. But because it knows which camera you have, I think it's still viable.
It doesn't. I use that setup. ASI Air Pro and with the ZWO cameras. I have the 2600 MC, and if I look at the specs on the 2600 MC, it's like the maximum gain is 350 or something.
Right.
I don't know the exact number. I don't have the specs in front of me, but it's a big number.
Right.
The highest I can set on the ASI Air is 100.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they scale that 350 to, you know, basically scale it to from 0 to 100, or if it's really, does 100 equal 350? Does 50 equal, you know, 175? Or is it really 100? Are they just giving you access to the first data point, you know, to the first points in that scale?
Well, do they all scale? It all scales the same way, right? 300 is the upper limit, or 350?
No. Some cameras might be, the specs might say the max gain is 450. And if you look at the ASI Studio, or you look at some other software applications, I think I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think software gives you the actual numbers. Like if I hook up my planetary camera, like the 485, if I hook that up, it goes up to some high number. If I put that camera in the ASI Air Pro, it doesn't. It goes maybe to 100. Some go to 50.
Yeah, I wonder if
I don't know what it means. I know Wayne looked into this and he hasn't determined what it means. So Mike, I don't know if you know anything further about how that really translates.
No, I don't. All I know, well, I guess all I know is from my results of shooting, that the gain that I accept, it meets this. It turns out exactly the same as as if it was like 100 versus 350 as an example. So it seems to work. Now, to your point, the translation, I don't know what they've done for the translation. That's a good ZWO technical question to be asking them, I guess. Yeah, and I have the 2600 as well, and I have noticed exactly what you're talking about.
So your thinking is that like in the ASI air, that a setting of 100 would equal 350 or whatever the number is.
It seems to be the case, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any documentation that actually says that. But from usage, it seems to be the case.
Yeah, I've had the same, sort of empirical, or made the same empirical conclusion you have based on.
And then looking at the histogram, as far as clipping, even though I don't seem to be clipping on the far right side of the histogram either. So to me, it seems to be it seems to be reasonably working well.
That's probably the best measure, I think, is looking at the histogram. And it gives you a quick and dirty information live.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to be in that sweet spot right after the little kick in the curve, because then you're really optimizing your noise versus dynamic range, right? That's the goal of kind of being in that part of that curve.
So I would imagine that, I mean, SharpCap does that, you know, and Fire Capture has that functionality. I would imagine that would be that type of indication in the ASI Air Pro software.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, but it's probably a different software team, and they have a little different implementation than the software team that did ASI Studio. You know, because they're both from the same company, both applications, but one is more, a combination of open source tools, right? If you look at the ASI Air, it's basically a Raspberry Pi with customized firmware that is based on open source tools like PhD, 2 and K-stars and things like that. So they might just have it, it's a different team of people. They didn't follow the same rules. They just scaled it like Mike's saying. So
I'm curious.
This is good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I kind of make the assumption that if it's at 50, like if I'm in a real dark sky site, I tend to keep the gain lower because I know I can shoot for 10 minutes or something, or 15 minutes, without getting a lot of light pollution. When I'm home, I tend to push the gain higher because I know I'm going to be limited by light pollution. So I'm not as concerned about kind of hitting that spot if I'm at home, because I know the limiting item is going to be the sky. It's not going to be sensor. It's not going to be the object that we're trying to see. We're talking.
I'm sorry, Gary, you were breaking up the past few words there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I tend to use the gain lower if I am in a dark sky site versus home. I tend to push the gain higher to reduce integration time.
Okay.
So what I'm wondering is if the two different systems just factor in a different offset, or if one's factoring the offset and to the value that you have for the gain. Didn't ISO change? I mean, ASI changed the standard on that a couple of years back. I guess I'm the wrong guy to ask. I don't use that system.
Yeah, that I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it.
Now, there is a formula that you can use to figure out the optimal exposure. It's like the read noise squared over the light pollution factor. You can find the read noise out on the Photons of Photos website. But let me see. The guy who developed SharpCap had a talk about this. He had a chart. It's actually a little bit shorter than you would think. Especially in like a Bortle 5 skies or Bortle 4 skies. I think the recommendation for like F7 would be somewhere around a minute or two tops. I was a little surprised. So I usually image for 5 minutes at a time in my backyard. I guess it doesn't matter as much if the object you're imaging doesn't have that big of a dynamic range, like usually nebula. Well, not all nebula, but some nebula. Certainly not the Orion Nebula. You want maximum dynamic range for that, or the Pleiades, because you want maximum dynamic range for that. Galaxies, you want to hit that sweet spot, because you have the core that's nice and bright, and then the faint details on the outside. Anyway, anybody have anything else to add?
For an F7, say at Bortle 7 skies, you're looking at 8.6 seconds. 8.6 seconds. But if you're using RGB filters, then you have to multiply that by 3.
Right. Are you looking at the same data I was talking about?
Yep.
Do you want to share that?
I just have it on my iPhone here. I
Okay.
use it in the field. So yeah, I got it from SharpCap, from that SharpCap lecture that you're referring to. If folks want to find it, it's on YouTube.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. You know what? Give me a second. Let me share the screen again, and we'll see if we can find it.
I think it's Robin Glover.
That's right. Let me see if we can get to the graph here. If we can skip through the commercials.
And of course, it assumes your micron size. So this is for microns, 3.75 micron pixels. So there's a lot of assumptions in these numbers as well.
Where is that? You can see this is an interesting lecture. If you haven't seen it before, here's all the crazy math that I was not going to get into. Yeah, if you want to know exactly how to figure out how long to expose for, there you go. Copy all that down. For most people that would be boring, but I could watch that again. I watched it 3 times already. So. At any rate,
They actually have on their website, SharpCap website, they have a tool section, and they have a sky background electron rate calculator. You put in all your stats, you put in the sky magnitude or Bortle number or naked eye limiting magnitude, and then it tells you how many electrons per pixel per second. So that would be
Yes.
a way to know when you hit full well capacity, right?
do you have that up there, Gary, on your computer? Because
I do actually.
you can go ahead and share.
I just Googled SharpCat exposure calculator, and it was the top hit. But I'll share. Let's see, what do I got here? Here it is.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah, so you can put in, if you have like an SQM, one of those sky quality meters, you can literally put in the number of the area that you're part of the sky you're pointing to. But I do agree that this would be, and anything like that, like this is a rule of thumb, right? You still use this as a starting point and then plan it, adjust accordingly. This is interesting. I haven't played with this. This would be an interesting little side calculation.
Gary?
Yeah.
What is this SQM, this sky quality meter? What is that?
It's a little device. I think the company's like Hedron or something like that, some name like that.
Right.
And they make a small device that has a photo sensor on the top and a lens, and then you press it and hold it, and it measures the sky brightness. And they have 2 models. One, I think they have 3. They have like a professional one, but the 2 consumer ones, one is a wide area sky, and then for another $20 or something, you can get a narrower field, so you can literally point it to a region of the sky, and it measures it it's basically a flux measurement, like a brightness flux measurement. I forget the units offhand.
Do you think it works? Many people use it?
It
Yeah,
does. It's used worldwide. They have in fact, a lot of the maps that you see, these sky brightness maps
Yeah.
are done from data collected. They have a portal where you can upload readings from different places, and they're calibrated. I think it's traceable to NST traceability and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
They're fairly well respected.
yeah, you would,
The company.
even if you don't have one, you can just take the data down from that map, from the sky darkness maps. But
Yeah.
it's all there.
Or is that accurate for your local area?
For me, it's pretty accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, on average. I mean, you do have variation. Al Lamperti has a meter, and I actually bought one about 2 years ago, just because I was traveling out west and I was curious to know really what the quantitative values were for different places. And it's surprising. Like I'll take a couple readings throughout the night. In fact, I've gotten in the habit recently of taking a reading right before I start imaging an object. Like if I image for an hour or two, I'll take a reading in that part of the sky. And even in the same part of the sky, you can see it vary quite a bit over the course of the night.
Oh yeah, especially zenith to 30, 40 degrees down. You get large
Sure.
range.
Yeah. Yeah, and even as haze, as like moisture comes in, like sometimes over the night it'll get less or more transparent. You can really see that. Now you do have to be careful using them because you don't want to, if you point it right at the Milky Way, that's going to be a source of light. So that'll give you a different reading than if you point it in a less a starry portion of the sky.
So what happens then if high level clouds start coming through the value? Is this a meter or a digital readout or what is it?
Yeah, it's a digital readout. So like if you were here and clouds came in, it would probably go up because the clouds are reflective. If you're at Cherry Springs and the clouds come in black, this is not a lot of light pollution. It's probably, the value would probably go up, meaning it's getting dark. So the higher the number, the darker it is. And it only goes to really limited range. It only goes to 20 foot change. Like for one sky, maybe 22.5 or less than 23. And a light polluted area might be like 18. So it's a fairly narrow range in terms of the that sort of light measurement of the speed.
All right, thanks.
You know what, Gary? Let me share my screen here, and I'll show you the chart here if you want to look at it. Get back here.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
All right. So you can see.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, you guys see that?
Yep.
You can get the value here. Just click on the spot wherever you want to look at here, and it shows you. If we go up to Blue Mountain Vista, let's see if we can find Blue Mountain.
So this is real time?
Yeah.
And this is sort of average data, I think, collected over.
Yeah, this is collected.
Yeah, over. It's recent though, right? Gets updated.
I think it does. I think it gets updated. I don't know what the interval is, but I think it's a kind of semi-live kind of thing.
So where was Blue Mountain Vista? Somewhere.
Yeah, it's off of Summer Valley Road and Archery Club Road.
Yeah, I'm trying to
The
find.
closest intersection.
No, somewhere around here. So there would be this yellow sky. Let's look at here, Hecla, New Ringgold. Here we go. So yeah, it would be right around here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit to the east, to the northeast. It's to the northeast of New Ringgold. Yeah, and that's more in that direction.
Pleasant Valley Road. Well, anyway, what does it
Yeah.
say if we click here? 21.17. And if you look at Frank's website, let's see what he records. So he's 20.86.
Yeah.
21. Yeah. So here, it's pretty close.
Yeah, when I was there the other night, there was a little bit of haze. It was 20.7.
Even with haze, that's still not bad.
Oh, no, no, it was a fairly clear night, but you could see some stuff coming in later in the night. But it was still decent at 27.
Well, there's nobody on the observing field for the supermoon tonight. Yeah, so this is a pretty handy tool. Light pollution map .info is the
Got it.
URL if you're interested. So that will help you figure out your the maximum exposure.
Thank you.
Pull the value from there. So do you guys have anything you guys want, anybody is interested in talking about next month? I'm trying to come up with the topic.
I have just a couple quick general questions about PixInsight.
Sure.
I know you're a user, Lou. I don't know if anyone else is, but and also that meta guide. Remember the speaker that talked about using it for collimation, SCT collimation.
I'm sorry, what was that, Gary?
The software meta guide
Right.
that was discussed to use for collimation. I don't know if anyone has tried that, see how successful it is, or had any issues or experiences with it.
I haven't used it.
Okay. I was just curious because with the planets coming around, I mean, he basically said that he will not image without doing that first, without really fine tuning collimation on his, on his C9.25.
Yeah, I think Agapios was saying sometimes he does it twice a night. He's a little OCD like that, but you see his images.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm curious to try it. I tried loading it on my on a newer laptop, and it had some kind of an issue. It wouldn't install. I think just because of Windows Windows 11 security. You usually have to kind of give permission for folders to be created. Sometimes if it's software it doesn't recognize.
Do I
But
know?
I didn't know if anyone had actually installed it or tried it. I was curious to know what their experience was.
I'm more concerned with that statement, Gary, whether or not I should install Windows 11 on my computer now.
I think it's a Windows 10 thing too. I don't think it's. I think it's anything after 7, because the security went up significantly from 7 to 10. And then also from PixInsight, I was curious. I've been evaluating, and I did the 45-day evaluation. I have about 7 days left in my evaluation. I'm really leaning towards getting it because after spending a fair amount of hours with it and YouTube stuff and Lou, the stuff you sent me and various things, I'm liking it more and more in terms of its approach, how sort of once you get a workflow, how predictable the results can be and how you get things to hang your hat on rather than like with Images Plus, a lot of times I would just move a slider to, okay. Is that me making that noise? Now, you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I can hear a background noise. I can hear something like almost like a printer printing or something.
Oh yeah, way faint in the background.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I'm really leaning towards getting it because I used Images Plus before, and it's very similar in terms of the sort of the paradigm that it uses from the software application standpoint. And you sort of apply actions to objects, meaning like an image, like an open image window or something. But it's since it's newer software, it's better organized and the tools are more current. So what I'm wondering about is, it looks like from a license standpoint, you basically buy it and it's your software. It's, sort of perpetual license. And from what I can tell, he just buys updates. So there's no subscription, not like once a year a new update comes up and they try to hit you up for more money kind of thing.
Never.
It looks
I've
like
never-
you buy it and you just get updates. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how it's been for me for the past, what, 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Gary, when you run PixInsight, what kind of computer are you running it on? What's your, what's the platform?
I have my main desktop computer, the one sitting right here. There's two monitors sitting here. That's a Core i5. And back then, you know, the numbers were different. It's like a three gig or something like that. Core i5, 15 gig of RAM. So not a high end machine. It was, I mean, at the time it was, but it's 7-8 years old, and it runs it fine. I mean, some processes take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but you go do something else for a while. The laptop I'm using here for this is a more powerful machine. It's a Core i7 with an SSD drive. I have an SSD drive on my desktop too. I did that to improve performance rather than get a new PC a couple of years ago. So my other question is, assume they allow you to install it on 2 computers once you buy it. Like I can have it on my laptop on both.
3.
Perfect. Because I can transfer this test license between computers, but I have to let them know, and then they generate a new key or something like that. So I'm just using it on my desktop. I haven't tried it on this laptop yet.
So, Gary, let me ask you, since you're looking at this recently, the value of the euro plummeted. Did the price of PixInsight go up? Because, you know, you buy it in euros.
Yeah, I know. It was, well, when I looked a month and 10 days ago or whatever, because it's a 45-day trial, and I have, you know, 7 days. So,
I think it's pretty cheap.
no, well, I mean, it was $230, $250.
Yeah.
It cheap.
Well,
I mean, I don't think that's cheap for software.
Well,
but
I mean, compared to paying $10
pretty cheap.
a month for subscription.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm used to
Actually-
a lot of you know freeware software, and you know Images Plus was put out in the public domain. That was 150 when I used to buy that. I bought my license for Images Plus. But I think it's reasonable for what it is, especially since they don't charge you a monthly rate or a yearly. Like with Images Plus, when new cameras got added, Mike Unsold, the guy who wrote that software, and you know, and that was his company. He basically, when he would update the SDK, the software development kit, for the various cameras, like Canon would come out with new cameras or Nikon, he would charge that as an upgrade fee. And then you would have to pay like $75 upgrade price every couple of years if you bought a new camera, because his older version of software didn't support your model of the camera. You know, Canon changed the rules. So that used to get old to me, where you know he kept hitting you up for another $75 every year or two if you bought a new camera. I would rather just pay a little more and kind of have the software for as long as I want to use it and it stays supported.
Yeah, never had another upcharge. I don't know. I thought it was cheap for what I paid for it, and I don't know. Everybody, I don't know. I used to use Photoshop, but I never really. I bought PixInsight before I really start getting into the weeds with Photoshop. So people were complaining about the learning curve with PixInsight. You know, they were used to using Photoshop. It's apples and oranges. It's 2 completely different approaches.
Yeah.
Not that, you know, one's better than the other. I'm biased toward PixInsight. I mean, everything you need for astrophotography is right there. You don't have to go, you know, digging around to do things where you might have to try 4 different processes to get a result with, you know, Photoshop and PixInsight. You know, it's one module. And what I really also like about PixInsight is the ability to have these scripts. And, you know, a lot of people have written scripts that come in really handy and save a lot of time. But yeah, if you'd like, maybe next month I can go over a process on PixInsight. But you know what? Let me show you guys something here, if you don't already know this. With PixInsight. Let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to global preferences, let's see if I can. To directories and network, play around with these. See, it automatically has a single you should probably only have one of these already populated in your field. But if you keep adding directories and run through the script for the benchmark, you can measure the time it goes to complete the benchmark, and you'll figure out how many temp directories you need to make this the most efficient. For example, so right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 temp directories. So I have 2 different drives, and these are the M.2 drives. They're Samsung 980 Pros. They're 7,000 gigabytes per second, so they're really fast. But so if we run the script here, and close out of this, run the script. The benchmark. Usually they tell you to run this a couple of times. And now, of course, I have all these other processes open in my computer. Besides Zoom, I have a couple of browser windows open, and that should slow things down. But run this benchmark first, the way PixInsight comes, and I would do it 3 times. And it'll tell you how quickly it does the process. So I'll give you the report here. So normally when I have everything closed and all the hard drives purged, everything, this goes down to 20 seconds or less. But it breaks this down into how much time the CPU takes, how much time, what the swap time is. That's a pretty big swap time. And there's the transfer rate. But you can see my hard drives can go a little bit faster than that. Actually, a lot faster than that. So let's run it again. Second time I go faster. But run it 3 times, add a directory or 2, run it again, add another directory, compare. And that way, it might take, half an hour or so to play with it, but you'll optimize your speed, and it'll really enhance your performance.
Where's that benchmark located? What script was it?
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let's report. So this one went down to 26. So to get that, you would go into
Scripts benchmarks.
yeah, but you want to change the directories first.
Right. No. I understand. I'm just trying to find the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Script benchmark, right? But to go in there, you go under global preferences, directories, and network, and that's where you would add. So what some people have done is they've added a RAM drive, and they would put that as a temp directory, depending on how fast their memory is. But that's one way you can enhance the speed on there.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I haven't done anything. I just used the defaults, and it's still, like, for my purposes, I'm not sitting here for hours and hours babysitting the computer. I'm fine with, like, I have a lot of other stuff to do. So it's kind of like, if I, even with the the weighted batch pre-processing stuff, I processed about 20 images today with 50 bias and 40 flats and 20 darks, and it took like 15 minutes or something like that. I went and made lunch, and when I came back, it was eating pretty much done. So but I'll take a look at that, because I just have the default right now with a single drive that the speed drive.
We're gonna notice a difference would be like in processes like star masks. I remember when I first did this, and I had my old slow PC. I mean, masks are extremely important, at least in my workflow, and it takes the most to make them correctly. It takes the most amount of time. This really cut down the time where I hate making a mask, because the first mask was never right. You'd have to make the mask, and then figure out how to tweak it, and then hit the button. You're waiting another 10 minutes for the mask to be made, and then tweak it again. But now I'm making masks 20 or 30 seconds. I can make 3 or 4 of them, and then get fine tune and isolate the one I need a lot quicker. So it really has the ability. And also when you're moving the slider, when you're there's, you know, when you're looking at the preview and you're making changes with whatever slider you're making changes, and it comes up quickly, you know, before and after, that's so helpful. Rather than, you know, I got to wait 10 minutes for this to load. I forgot what it looked like 10 minutes ago. You know, what am I comparing it to? So yeah, so it will help a little bit.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It's been good so far. I mean, it's been stable, which is one thing I like. It hasn't crashed in a month of playing with it, which is good. I tend to reboot the computer daily, so it's not like I'm leaving it on for multiple days, because that can just cause other instabilities, like in Windows itself or whatever. But the software's been good so far, and I like that it's predictable. I like that and I also like that a lot of the default menus are good starting points. The one thing I never liked about Images Plus is that the default, like when you open up a tool, it's basically defaulted to just a null set. So the tool does nothing if you were to apply it unless you change something. And there's no, with Images Plus, since it was a one-man show writing it as a side business, it didn't have like mouse over help, stuff like that, which would say, hey, this slider is do this if you want to kind of get this effect, to at least get you oriented. You were always just playing with it, applying it, and then, okay, I don't like that. I need to back out and figure out what the slider does in the other direction. Right. So with PixInsight, I like that it's reasonable speed values with the dialogue for you to get started with.
Yeah, I like that when you hover the mouse over whatever you're looking at, it gives you a little explanation that, hey, sometimes it's too detailed.
I know, but it's actually really good. I mean, I've been learning a lot about the tools just by doing the mouse. Yeah. So even in terms of I had one image where I just took a couple of test shots of the deeper exposure, longer exposure time, and I'm thinking, well, if I want to add those subs in too, what's a good integration method for something that only has three or four subs? And by mousing over, in terms of the batch pre-process, mousing over, it said, hey, if you have 50, use this. If you have 10 to 15, this is a good one to use. If you only have a couple, this is the one you have to use, but the other one is just. So that for me was really helpful for picking, which one I wanted to use for those couple extra subs.
So when you have more than like 15 subs or 20 subs, I like the ESD. This new one that just came out with. That is a really great algorithm to use. Stacking, but other problems
that's only, sorry to interrupt, but that was only if it was a lot of stuff, because I actually picked that. I had 12 subs, and it said we don't recommend you using this because you need at least 15, and they even recommend it higher.
Right. Yeah, that's what at least 15 or 20. So one thing, one of the reasons why I was using that, I remember I was having trouble with satellite removal. It wouldn't remove the complete what was I using? WizardOS Sigma clipping or some other algorithm, and I wouldn't get complete removal of all of the satellite trails. Some of them would be completely gone, but you can see faint artifacts left behind. But when I used the other one, the ESD one, and that took care of everything.
That's good. Yeah.
Also, I think another guy that is really informative, if you want to look at YouTube videos, Adam Block has.
I've seen his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he is very thorough. He knows that. I'm surprised he didn't write the software, or maybe he's got some kind of role in that. But he really knows it inside and out.
I tell you, there was one tutorial. I have seen a number of his. He does seem to be really good, especially getting into a little more depth now that I'm understanding the tool a little better. Now I'm getting more comfortable with it. But one YouTube video I found that really kind of got me sort of up on the learning curve significantly was by put out by Scientific, and he takes the guy who, I don't know the guy's name. I'd have to find the video, but I think it's Kyle. I think his name is Kyle, and he basically takes a couple user submitted images, like people email him images and said, "Hey, can you show me how to process pictures?" And he did 3 of them 31. Unfortunately, it was the same image. It was just difficult. But what was nice about it is they actually have a link in the YouTube video description. They have a link to the workflow. He basically has a PDF of the workflow, and to me that was really valuable. So, and then I actually scanned it into Word document, and I actually did screenshots because using Adam Block, he has assignments some of the same tools like that he found worked well, and it became a really nice way to kind of through 3 or 4 images with that written workflow and kind of see what comes of it. So anyway, if anyone's playing with this, I highly recommend that High Point Scientific one.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tutorials out there. YouTube, I don't know what I did without it. YouTube University. Everything I learned about astrophotography was from YouTube. And of course, you guys, everything you guys have helped me with.
Well, cool. I think I'm going to pull the trigger on it. I have a week left to decide, but I think I'm going to pull the trigger on it because you have a lot of money invested in equipment.
Yes.
And it's actually made the processing faster for me because I'm guessing less at what the tools are doing, and it's also been more consistent. I'm getting, even in terms of like noise reduction and stuff like that. The tools for noise reduction and some of the scripts that people have put into the public domain. There was this, in fact, this I learned about from the High Point Scientific. He talks about there's this set of scripts that a guy wrote based on all these methods that these various people have come up with, and it's called like easy scripts. And there's one that he uses called easy denoise.
Yes.
And it uses a lot of the PixInsight scripts, and it uses all the procedures, but it does like 1,500 iterations, subtle iterations of noise reduction. So it goes away for, on my computer, 30, 35 minutes. And it's noticeably better in the noise without really, causing much artifact. I mean, it's hard to detect any artifact. So just a tool like that to me is invaluable in terms of making the process more predictable and more straightforward. Because it's a wacky topic. I mean, when you look at what we're really trying to do, you're trying to pull a couple electrons of difference between one pixel and the one next to it, and make it look, presentable and have some meaning.
Right. The easy denoise script, I think, follows John Rista's method.
It does. Yeah.
And that is, when I first used that, I was floored at the difference and how smooth. I mean, you can't even tell. It doesn't, everything about that is making the masks correctly. I mean, everything about this PixInsight, or even, I guess, Photoshop, if you want to, protect the areas you don't want altered, right? I mean, and the way that makes them, a lot of times I might just use that script just to make the masks to use them for another process.
Right.
Or maybe I'll tweak make the masks and do something manually there. But yeah, that isn't I use the easy denoise, the easy deconvolution one. I love deconvolutions. Also it's a very processor intensive process. You can put that on and walk away and make dinner and then eat dessert and then come back.
Take a nap.
Exactly. Well, it helps having a fast PC and a lot of RAM, but I mean, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of a stickler with PCs because, every time you buy a PC, even though the performance is better and all that, the amount of time it takes to set it up is weeks. At least for me, I have a lot of software, I have a lot of data, and I keep most of the data. The big stuff is on external drives and stuff. But still, setting up a PC to me is like, if I can avoid this in any way possible, for years, I'm going to try to do it because it just takes so much time. And I've done it, I used to build PCs when I was, in like early in my career and stuff. So, and I did beta testing for Microsoft back in the early 80s on Windows and stuff. So, I'm very familiar with it, very comfortable with that world, but I avoid it like the plague. If I can throw an SSD drive in and increase speed, I'll do that over getting a new processor. And, I don't know. I just hate rebuilding systems because it just takes so long to get them set up right.
I just rebuilt mine. It was the first time in 11 years. And the only reason is the computer completely just went kaput. The CPU died. And so much had changed. I had no idea about these M.2 drives. All I knew was SATA, and SATA was new back then when I built my PC. Now they moved to, you put the hard drive right directly onto the motherboard right now. And I can't believe how fast they are. The Samsung 980 Pros, they're 7 gigabytes per second of data. It's like ridiculously fast.
Yeah, they are screaming.
Yeah. So very, very powerful, but it comes in, it really, when I got that PC built, it really increased my production as far as astrophotography wise.
Sure.
And I'd be more prone to collect more data because I know I'd be able to use it. Why would I collect weeks or days of data on a subject, and I don't want to process it because it would take 1 day just to stack it. And then when you stack it, all the artifacts didn't come out. Now you gotta do it again. But at least with the PixInsight, what took hours before, now it just takes a few minutes with a fast.
Who in the group who uses PixInsight? It sounds like you use it, Mike. And Doug, do you use it? No. So
I don't
Lou
think
and
my
Mike.
computer. I don't think my computer is powerful enough.
Well, it's time. It's either power or time. So.
I know Mark Ferrari, I think, uses PixInsight.
Yeah, Mark does. I know Mark does. There were a couple other people who contributed to the spring challenge.
So I had a question concerning noise in post-processing, and I guess I just got the answer, which is I have to buy PixInsight.
No, I don't think so. There's a lot of other ways to do it, but
Then now I want to hear about that too.
PixInsight's the easiest, I'm telling you.
PixInsight is a great tool. Even for other things. In fact, September issue of Sky and Telescope, if you received it yet, they have a great article about how PixInsight can actually improve. Say you have sort of oblong stars, like your guiding wasn't absolutely perfect. Your stars are a little bit stretched. PixInsight can actually correct that. So there's a function now in PixInsight whereby PixInsight will actually recognize that, and you can actually correct them to be absolutely perfect stars.
Wow.
So it's more than just noise and the traditional things. PixInsight's gone way ahead of. Hopefully, it'll also remove satellite trails as more SpaceX launches.
Yes.
that's for sure.
So I have a survey question. I've been asking folks this. Does anyone use, for imaging, any Barlow lenses or the TeleVue PowerMate at all for DSO imaging?
Not DSO, planetary, yes.
Yeah, planetary, yes. But I'm just wondering about if anyone's actually, other than square of the power or whatever you're using, as far as like if you use 60 seconds for a sub, then you're up. Say if you use a 2x, then you're up to 240 seconds then versus 60. So amount of imaging time dramatically increased. I'm just wondering if anyone has found a way around that yet, other than just more time.
What do you, how are you guiding when you're using that? Are you using an off-axis guide, or I guess
Yeah, I'm using off-axis guider.
with a Barlow?
I haven't done it yet. I was just playing with the idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried a Barlow on, I have a Teleview 2X PowerMate, 2-inch 2X PowerMate that I've had for years that I, use for planetary stuff and other, visual use. And I tried it with my my 4-inch refractor. I have a Teleview 101. It's an f/5.4, and I wanted to just get a little. And it measures. If you plate solve, it measures about 504 millimeters, so it's more like an f/5. And I wanted a little higher image. I was shooting M81 and 82, and I wanted it to really just kind of crop in close to them with that little NGC above it. And I was very disappointed with the result in terms of star bloating, stuff like that. Not so much additional sort of elongation in the corners, like in terms of it not being as flat, field as flat. More so from star bloating. And it was interesting. I was up at Blue Mountain, and Frank came over to just kind of say hi, and we chatted for a while. And he was looking at the setup, and he said, "Oh, I see you. You have the Barlow on it." I said, "Yeah, I'm actually trying it for time tonight. It was earlier in the night." And he said, he told me his experience was actually pretty bad with Barlow also in terms of star bloating. He said he just couldn't seem to get around having overly bloated stars when using a Barlow. Now, I don't know what was common about, but when I heard that, and when I took the images and I came home, started looking at them, I could see that. I could see it even in the raw, in the individual images. And it wasn't so much that it was just the factor that it's twice as big because of the image scale 2x. It was more than just loaded.
Well, Gary, look, normally my default philosophy is I'll try anything. You don't know until you've tried it for yourself.
Sure.
I've speculated about that, but it does seem to me that if you could double the focal length of your telescope by putting an inexpensive Barlow on it, that people would know about that already.
Yeah, I mean, people do it. I mean, you do it for planetary stuff, all the time.
Yeah.
But
I've done it with
the downside with DSO is that you're doubling your exposure also, which is the thing you're asking about.
Yeah. So right. So you would do it. You could certainly use the PowerMate, say, for visual. So if you're just observing visually, is one thing. But imaging becomes a whole different issue, because if you're a 2x, then you're 4 times the length of your sub-exposures, or if you're like 3x, then you're 9 times. So it's the square of whatever your power that you're using. So if you're using 60-second subs now, if you had a 2x PowerMate, and you were doing 60 seconds, and then you put the PowerMate on, now you're up to 4x based. So now you're at 4 times 60, or 240 seconds subs now, to get the equivalent light image.
Right. And because it changes it by one stop. Right.
Yeah. So, but 240 seconds per sub. If you're shooting, 40 subs, 240 seconds per sub. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Plus, then you got to shoot your flats the same amount of time, right? So, yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean,
Are you asking it because of you want the extra focal length? You want the different image?
Yeah. So I've got like I've got a Takahashi 85 millimeter. So as an example, M51 as an example, appears just too small. So I just wanted to double up the size of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, to do that now, I have to do 4 times the amount of subs. I mean, 4 times the length of the subs. So, you know, it just becomes time-wise, just becomes not feasible. And that's why I guess people just don't do it. It's just the amount of time it takes.
Yeah,
The
Makes sense for planetary, but
guiding is also an issue with using a Barlow. I mean, haven't found a way to guide with my auto guider. I suppose if you have a secondary scope that has a very similar focal length, because you know you really have to bump that up too. You're going to be tracking longer, so you got to be more accurate when you're guiding, and your pixel scale is going to be increased.
yeah.
You're going to notice error a lot quicker. And you know, to answer your question about Star Blue, I don't know if this is actually the answer, but I suppose you can use an H alpha filter, and that will also increase your time from 240 to
Sure.
to 480. You know, you're going to be imaging forever.
We know Frank, I think is shooting, I think that Hyperion that he has is a native f8. So if he's shooting with a 2-power Barlow, you know,
this was on his Joe. This was on his refractor. He told me.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on his refractor. Yeah, it was apples to apples.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. I was just wondering if anyone's actually tried it. And
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the results, because it's just like you, Mike. I wanted to try that myself, but I kept running into problems.
Yeah, I wound up to get the extra focal length. I wound up using as an experiment. I tried, you know, Doug, to your point, you know, like try something. You know, you don't know if you try. I had an old C6, a Celestron C6 OTA that I bought. It was Joe when we went out to when we did the trip to Arizona.
Right.
I bought that OTA just so I could carry it on the plane and
Yeah.
have a decent size OTA for observing out there. And I thought, you know, let me throw the camera on that. And even shooting at f10 and the C6 is more like f11. So when I plate solved, it was 1700 millimeter focal length. And I'm doing it without a reducer, without a flattener. And I tell you, the images are like surprisingly good. To the point where, and it's compact. I mean, a C6 is a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
And I actually wound up ordering one of the Star Arizona SCP correctors. They've been back ordered for like 3 or 4 months, and I figured I just put the order. It's supposed to come in August. That'll turn it into like an F6.3 and really be like F7 based on it being more like an F11.
The reviews of them are very good too.
Yeah.
The ones that I've read. So they seem very promising. You know,
and that'll get me, Mike, that'll get me around a little over 1200 millimeters focal length.
Yeah.
With 6 inches of aperture, you know, at f7. So it's I'm not losing a lot of speed in terms of that focal ratio. And I think that's going to become my sort of, you know, travel higher focal length rig, because I'm impressed with it. And I think that OTA was $500 when I bought it. It wasn't very expensive.
That's great, Gar.
Yeah, but I mean, just as an option in terms of having you know, an alternative for longer focal length. Anyway,
So, is anybody interested in presenting for next month for PixInsight? Or is there anything that you guys want to hear about that you want me to get together? And I haven't used PixInsight in quite a while. I am a little rusty, but if there's something specific, I can go over it. I mean, Gary, it sounds to me like you're pretty up to speed. If you're using scripts, you're up to speed with me.
no, not even close. I'm just still, you know, cutting my teeth with it. You know, obviously I had experience from other software, right? I've been using Photoshop for decades, and you know, Images Plus and other software along the line. I even played with that material for a while. That software was pretty powerful, but to me it was a little too black box. Wasn't exactly sure what it was doing. Most of it is just script. But no, I'm not at a point where I think I'm comfortable presenting. I mean, I'd be fine going over something like that at quick scientific flow because I found that really, really good. But I need to enhance that. That didn't get much into star map stuff, and I know from my Photoshop work and from images plus how critical that is in terms of reducing star error, getting one area.
Just trying to figure out a topic then for next month.
Lou,
Yeah.
if you're looking for an idea for a topic, I'd be interested in guiding.
Okay.
Guiding because I could use some help on that. Best guiding I ever had was in Maine, but typically my PhD 2 traces look like Fukushima.
Yeah. Well, so the thing I'd like to show, maybe I can do this before. Okay, so I haven't switched my scope yet to planetary imaging, but once I switch and put the Barlow lens on, I won't be guiding much, but maybe we can do this as an impromptu workshop. Then if you want to do one on guiding, it'll have to be weather dependent, so that I can have the roof open and show you step by step on what I do. Basically, PhD 2 does most of the work. I just use some of their tools when I get started. I try to get as polar line as close as possible, but I don't have to worry about that in my I have a peer. But if you're within 3 arc minutes, there's a second. If you're within 3 arc minutes, you're probably close enough, especially if you're setting up and breaking down each time. You don't want to spend all night polar aligning. But there's also tools you can use, like the guiding assistant that you let that run. And the problem with guiding is, and using the tools, is the conditions change on the sky, during the night. As your object is moving higher on the horizon, the seeing changes. So you have to keep all that in mind when you're setting your guide interval. So if you go into better seeing, you can get a quicker guide interval. If there's turbulence, obviously, and I'm trying an experiment now where I think I'm going to buy a second ZWASI camera, the one that's $199, and let that run all night because it's interesting to see. If you do the panoramic view of the sky all night, you can see the patterns of the airstream, as it reflects from the clouds. So you can get a good idea of where I don't know yet, but I'm hoping that will give me a good idea of which part of the sky is calmer than others, so that maybe you can correlate that with the guide interval you choose and the different parameters that you're setting on PhD with the minimum motion parameter, which the guiding assistant does for you. But that's the other thing. If you got to keep running the guiding assistant every couple hours, you're not going to. Where's your data going to come from? It's a lot of time wasted. So you got to be like that a lot of the times. The Kundamortem.
Good topic, though. I mean, I tend to use PhD 2 with the default for the most part, minor tweaks, and have a good result. But the thing that I found to be one of the most the more critical things is just not having too short, because we're always chasing seeing. It's rare that we have good seeing in this area.
Yeah.
And if you have your like half-second or 1-second exposure, you're going to be chasing seeing. And I found that one of the single biggest benefits or improvements that I saw in my guiding when I just started to routinely do 2 and 3 second integration time. Nice. And even in the brightness, I'll sometimes, like default is to have figures out the configuration of stars to use, like the stars to use. I've actually had it sometimes saying, I don't care about, what algorithm you're using. I want this star because it's a little brighter and it seems to be less affected by the thing.
Gary, your microphone is cutting in and out. It's really difficult to understand.
Oh, sorry. Maybe it's just a little far away. I'm not sure. Is everyone?
That sounds better.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I was sitting back. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that was good. Listen, I spent a week in Maine, and it was a revelation. My AVX mount worked the way I thought it was going to work when I bought it.
That's always good news, right?
Yeah.
That mount is so underrated. That's such a great mount for the price. It's great for star parties. It's super light. I used that mount exclusively before I got my CGX for all my deep sky images, and the guiding error was better with the AVX mount than I've had now with my CGX. I've had so much trouble with my current mount, so I've really had to hone in on using VHD2 and tweaking it as much as possible. So all right, so let's play it by ear. We'll see how the weather goes, you're just gonna have to be ready if it's clear night. Maybe we'll know a day or two in advance.
Well, that was another thing about Maine, because my impression was for their 2 out of every 3 nights were clear. So if you didn't do it tonight, you could just do it tomorrow. This is great.
Right. Well, all right. So I mean, you can keep your eye open for that. So I don't.
Yeah, we're back to 1 day out of every 10 now.
Well, I mean,
are you doing off-axis guiding, or are you doing piggyback?
No, I do. I have a little a cheapy guide scope. I have a short focal length refractor and a little 100mm guide scope. That's what I use mostly.
so then, all right. So you want me to set that up? That's going to be. That's
No,
gonna
I mean I have piggyback guiding,
Yeah, piggyback guiding.
and I've done that with both short and long focal lengths successfully. It's trickier with long focal length, obviously, because of differential flexure. But if you have a good set of rings, I've had it up to 2,500mm focal length in terms of the imaging scope with piggyback without problems.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, Doug. It's going to cost you extra if you want to do piggyback guiding for that.
Oh yeah, the piggyback.
That's a pay. I mean,
surcharge.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you want me to show you? Well, where's all that static coming from? Yeah, I'll show you my Orion Short Tube 80 on the back of my. That's a lot of work now. You're gonna have to pay me for that. Sorry. Anyway, just keep your eye open for that. Maybe we'll do something for that. But there's nothing else.
Can I bring over Chipotle or something?
There's nothing else. Hey, you can clean my observatory. There's no. Next time you come over.
Yeah. I just had something I wanted to mention. Today, several of us received an invitation from Jan for a deep sky clinic to be held later in the summer, and probably up by Green Lane, it looks like. And I was wondering if that wouldn't be a bad opportunity to really maybe try some live stacking and demonstrate that. I didn't know if perhaps we could partner with her and do. We were talking about doing a live workshop anyway. It might be an opportunity to combine forces and do a live stacking workshop. Only because we were talking about doing a live program.
That sounds like a good option to me. The thing is, I really wish I could commit to doing something like that. I mean, my health is just,
I'm not sure that it requires a decision
Yeah, I don't
now.
think-
yeah. The
It,
thing
it
is,
might be the thing that maybe a week before we send out a flyer and say, hey, you know, for the people that we're thinking of going to this, you know, we've decided to do a live stacking demonstration at the same event. I just thought it'd be worth just thinking about for later.
I think it's a good idea.
yeah, definitely a good idea. Whether or not I can participate, I can't make any promise. In fact, guys, I'm gonna have to cut this meeting short because I'm not feeling so good right now.
Okay.
If you
Hope
guys,
you're feeling better, Lou.
yeah, thanks. If you guys can think of anything you want me to go over, or if somebody else wants to present for next month, please let me know. Right now, I got nothing, except we'll just do an impromptu, guiding meeting if the skies cooperate.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good luck, Lou.
Right.
All right. Thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good. Good luck. Take care.
Guys.
Thank you.